A thick layer of snow crunched under his boots as Marcus turned the corner onto Whitmore Avenue. The wind howled down the narrow street like it had a personal vendetta, and the streetlights flickered, casting nervous shadows on the sidewalk. Marcus kept his hands buried deep in the pockets of his faded jacket, the tips of his fingers numb despite the gloves he wore. It was almost 11 p.m., and he'd just finished a double shift at the auto shop. His mind, as always, was on Lily. His 11-year-old daughter, Lily, was everything to him. Ever since her mother, Emma, passed away from a sudden stroke 3 years ago, Marcus had gone from weekend handyman to full-time dad, cook, nurse, and bedtime storyteller. He never saw himself raising a kid alone, but when the world gives you no choice, you either break or build something stronger from the pieces. Most nights, Lily would fall asleep with one of her graphic novels pressed against her chest, the lamp still on beside her bed. She'd always try to stay up until he got home, but she rarely made it past 9:30. He'd walk in, cover her with the extra blanket she always kicked off, and kiss her forehead. Sometimes she stirred. Sometimes she whispered, "Hi, Daddy." Tonight, he imagined her already curled up, warm and safe, as snow drifted silently past the window. Then he heard it, a sharp voice, raised, angry, bouncing off the buildings around him. "No! Let go of me! Stop!" Marcus froze. It was a girl's voice. Young. Scared. He turned his head toward the alley between the laundromat and the closed-down florist shop. A man tall, maybe late 30s, in a black jacket, was gripping a teenage girl by the arm. She was thrashing, tears streaking down her cheeks, and she looked like she could barely keep her footing in the snow. People were walking past, eyes averted, phones clutched tightly, headphones in. Marcus didn't think. He didn't weigh the options. He didn't calculate the risk. He moved. "Hey!" he barked, his voice cutting through the air like a whip. The man looked up, startled, eyes wide. "Mind your business," he snapped. But Marcus wasn't listening. His feet were already crunching across the alley. His hands, which had been tired from turning bolts and lifting engines all day, balled into fists. His legs, sore from standing for 14 hours, suddenly found new strength. The girl's eyes met his for a split second. Pure fear. That was all it took. The man stepped back, yanking the girl toward a white van parked near the alley entrance. Marcus swung. The punch landed hard and fast, right across the man's jaw. He stumbled backward, hitting the side of the van with a grunt. The girl fell to the ground, sobbing free. "Run!" Marcus shouted. But she didn't move. She was frozen, terrified. The man regained his balance and lunged toward Marcus, swinging wildly. Marcus ducked, drove his shoulder into the man's gut, and tackled him to the icy ground. They struggled. Snow kicked up around them. A trash can tipped over. Somewhere a bottle shattered. Marcus felt a punch graze his ear, but adrenaline drowned out the pain. He pinned the man's arms, breathing hard, heart pounding. "I said run!" he shouted again, eyes locked on the girl. This time she moved. Stumbled at first, then sprinted toward the sidewalk. Moments later, red and blue lights flashed across the snow. Someone had called the cops. By the time the officers pulled Marcus off the guy, the girl was wrapped in a blanket in the back of a patrol car, sipping hot cocoa an officer had bought from the corner gas station. Her name was Mia. She was 14. She'd been missing for 2 days. The man, Greg Tolson, was wanted in connection with multiple cases of attempted abduction across 3 counties. He had a history, a long one. And if Marcus hadn't intervened? No one wanted to think about that. Later that night, Marcus sat in the back of another patrol car, giving his statement. He had a cut on his lip, bruises on his knuckles, and a sore shoulder, but all he could think about was getting home to Lily. The officer, a woman maybe in her early 30s with tired eyes but a kind voice, looked at him through the divider and said, "You saved her life tonight." Marcus shrugged. I just did what anyone would do. But the look on the officer's face said otherwise. No, she replied. Not anyone. Just the right one. When Marcus finally got home, it was past 1 a.m. The snow had stopped. Lily's nightlight was still on, casting soft stars onto her ceiling. He stood in her doorway, just watching her breathe. A curl of her hair had fallen across her nose. He exhaled and rubbed his sore knuckles gently. She didn't wake up. She never knew. But the world had shifted. The next morning, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. News outlets, local radio. A reporter even showed up at the shop before Marcus clocked in. They all wanted the hero mechanic. But Marcus wasn't looking for a spotlight. He declined every interview. All he wanted was to make pancakes with Lily, drive her to school, and maybe fix the creaky hinge on the bathroom door he'd been ignoring for weeks. But then something happened. On a Saturday morning a week later, as Marcus and Lily walked out of the grocery store with bags in hand, a woman stepped into their path. She looked hesitant, bundled in a heavy coat, and her eyes were rimmed red from tears. It was Mia's mother. You're Marcus, she said. He nodded slowly, not sure where this was going. I just wanted to thank you for what you did, for saving my daughter. Behind her, Mia stood quietly. Her hair was brushed, her face softer than the last time he'd seen it, like she'd had sleep and safety again. I don't know how to say this, her mother continued, voice trembling. But if you ever need anything. Marcus looked at Mia, then back at her mom. He shook his head. You don't owe me anything. Just take care of her. They left, but something lingered. That night, Marcus told Lily everything. She sat wide-eyed as he recounted the night, minus the bloodier details. Daddy, she said slowly, you're a superhero. He laughed and ruffled her hair. Nah, I'm just your dad. But in the quiet that followed, he realized something had changed. Not just in how others saw him, but how he saw himself. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was showing Lily, with every act, every choice, what it meant to stand up, even when no one else would, even when it hurt, even when it scared you. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is throw the first punch, when the world needs one. The weeks that followed settled into something strange, a mix of normal life with pockets of the surreal. Marcus still woke at 6, packed Lily's lunch, dropped her off at school, and headed to the shop to rotate tires, change oil, and argue with Rex about overtime. But now he was recognized. The cashier at the grocery store called him, that guy from the news. A woman at Lily's school conference asked for a selfie. Even Lily's teachers gave him that respectful, knowing nod like he was suddenly more than just a dad who showed up with paint on his hands and grease under his nails. Marcus didn't hate the attention, but he didn't love it either. All he'd done in his mind was stop something awful from happening. That didn't make him a hero. That made him human. But then the letter came. It was simple, handwritten on thick stationery, no return address. Just a single sentence on the page. If more people were like you, maybe my daughter would still be alive. There was no name, no signature, just the weight of grief in the ink. Marcus read it once, then folded it gently and tucked it into the drawer by his bed. That night, he stared at the ceiling, Lily snoring softly down the hall, and let the silence press in. He hadn't expected to be reminded of how thin the line was between tragedy and salvation, between stepping in and stepping back. He hadn't expected that not acting might haunt someone else forever. One Friday evening, about a month after the alley, Marcus noticed Lily wasn't eating her dinner. She was quiet, pushing peas around her plate with her fork, her eyes unfocused. You good kid? He asked. She shrugged. Some kids at school were talking about you. About what you did. Marcus braced himself. Yeah. They said you were crazy. That you could have been killed. He leaned back, letting her words hang there. "Do you think it was worth it?" she asked, finally looking up at him. He stared at his daughter, so much like her mother in the eyes, but sharper in spirit. "Would you want someone to do that for you if you were in trouble?" She nodded instantly. "Then yeah," he said. "It was worth it." Lily thought for a second, then picked up her fork again. "Okay." That night, she asked him to tell her the story again. This time, she didn't interrupt. When he finished, she climbed into his lap and hugged him tight. "I think you're a superhero," she whispered again. And this time, he didn't correct her. 2 weeks later, Marcus got a call from Mia's mother. Her voice was nervous, but warm. "Hi, I know this is strange, but Mia asked if she could see you. Just for a little while. She says she sleeps better when she knows you're still out there." Marcus didn't hesitate. Of course. They met at a local coffee shop on a Sunday. Marcus brought Lily. Mia brought a stack of comic books to give to Lily as a thank you gift. The girls hit it off immediately, sitting at a side table, laughing like old friends. Mia's mom and Marcus sat across from each other, steam rising from their mugs. "She's different now," she said quietly. "Stronger. But she still flinches when a man walks behind her. Still checks the locks 3 times before bed." Marcus nodded. "That's going to take time, but she'll get there." Then she looked at him and said something that stayed with him forever. "Sometimes the world's on fire, and all it takes is one person willing to burn their hands to pull someone else out. That was you." Marcus didn't know what to say, so he just nodded, sipped his coffee, and watched Lily and Mia trade drawings of comic book characters they made up on the spot. Months passed. Life resumed. The snow melted. The shop got busier. Lily made the soccer team. And then, one day, Marcus came home to find a small envelope taped to his front door. Inside was a card with a printed invitation. Local Heroes Gala, hosted by the city of Fairbridge, recognizing outstanding civilian courage. His name was printed at the bottom of the guest list. He almost threw it away, but Lily found it on the table and beamed. "We're going," she declared. "I don't even own a suit," he muttered. "Then we're getting one." The night of the gala, Marcus stood stiff in a charcoal blazer that didn't quite feel like him. Lily wore a purple dress and sparkly sneakers, and held his hand like she always did when she was little. When the mayor called his name, the room applauded. Mia stood in the front row, tears in her eyes. He walked up to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and cleared his throat. "I don't have a speech," he began, his voice low. "I'm not really good at talking about myself. I fix engines. I change tires. I raise a daughter who's smarter than me and keeps me honest. I didn't plan to be in a fight that night. I didn't know who that girl was. I just knew what I saw was wrong." He paused, glancing at Lily. "My daughter once asked me if it was worth it, risking everything. And the truth is, every day we walk past things we shouldn't. We turn our heads. We say it's not our business. But one day it might be our business. It might be your kid, your sister, your friend." Another pause. "You don't have to be a superhero. You just have to be someone who says, 'Not today.' Someone who punches first when the world needs it." The crowd stood. Applause thundered through the room. But Marcus wasn't looking at them. He was looking at Lily. The ride home was quiet. Lily fell asleep in the back seat. Marcus glanced at her in the mirror, her cheek resting against the window. A red light stopped him at the corner of Whitmore Avenue, the same street, the same place. Snow had just started to fall again. He pulled the car over, turned off the engine, and stepped out. He walked to the alley, looked at the spot near the van. The wall still had a scuff mark where he'd tackled Greg Tolson. He stood there for a long minute, breathing in the cold, remembering everything. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the letter, the one with no name, no return address. He unfolded it once more, read the words again. Then he lit it on fire with a match and let it burn, the ashes disappearing into the wind. The past was part of him, but it wouldn't define him. He got back in the car, adjusted Lily's blanket, and drove home through the falling snow, knowing he'd done something that mattered. And he'd do it again, in a heartbeat. Because sometimes, you don't wait for permission. You punch first. You ask later. And you live knowing that choice saved a life.